Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Se Vuelve Podcast. My name is Monica, and I want to thank you for being here. On this week's episode, I'm sitting down with my colleague, Katherine. I actually met her last year when I returned to substitute teaching. So help me welcome Katherine. Hi, Katherine. Welcome to Se Vuelve Podcast. How are you doing today?
Hi, Monica. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for sitting here with me and talking.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So I kind of, in the intro, mentioned that you are a colleague of mine. She works at one of the schools that I go to teach at. So I just kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about kind of where you grew up at and then like how was school in your country?
Thank you. Of course. Yeah. For those who don't know, I am from Peru. I grew up in Peru my whole life. I was born and raised there. So I lived in three different towns during my entire life in Peru. Because my mom is from one part of Peru. She was a nurse. When it was time for her to work, she traveled to a different town and met my dad there. They got married. I was born, and then we lived there for 4 years. After that, we moved back to my mom's town, where I lived until I was 12 years old. Went to two different schools there, and then moved to the city with my aunts to go to high school. So education was different. I always went to very small schools with small groups of kids until I went to a public school in high school. I guess I was able to see the private side and the public side school wise. But as I said, my parents live in a very small town. So I always went to a with very small group of kids.
Yeah.
I don't know if these helped me much to bond with people. I always thought it didn't because I went to two different kindergartens. I went to two different elementary schools. I went to two different high schools. So I feel like that didn't help me much bonding with people.
Yeah, building connections because you were always on kind of like on the move. You were transitioning or transferring to two different schools, so you felt that you weren't able to build like maybe like deep friendships.
Exactly. Yeah. And I always thought I had a best friend. My friend from elementary school. Then, I moved to a different school and then we met again in high school for a couple more years. But I guess you have to live that to kind of understand because as a kid, you see your best friend going with other friends. When you move to a different city, it feels like someone's betraying you, even though it's not the case.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, at that age range, you don't have that mental capacity to understand that, right? Like you just, as you develop, as you grow, you learn those things. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
did you have a preference between like private or public schools? Like,
well, in Peru, it's hard because when I went to a private school, it was a very small town. So I don't think I learned much um, at the school that I went from first to fifth grade. I learned nothing until I moved to sixth grade to a different private school where my teacher was my principal. So she was such an amazing teacher. I feel like I learned with her everything that I didn't learn during my first 5 years of elementary school.
Wow. So I'm like trying to think because it's that. So this was a private school, right?
Both
so this was this something that your parents paid for you to go to, like as a private school?
Yes, but keep in mind that in Peru, private schools, at least at that time, were not that expensive, especially in small towns. So it wasn't like it was crazy expensive and you have to get the best of the best. It wasn't the case, unfortunately. It was in my sixth grade elementary school. As I said again, I did learn a lot.
What could you say that you learned from that first private school then?
Maybe as a teacher, when you try, I think my teacher back then thought that helping a student was giving them the answers,
Mm,
and that's what she used to do with us. She
yeah.
thought that she was helping us by giving us the answers to the tests.
Oh,
So I guess what I learned, and now as an adult, of course, you know that it's not the right thing to do.
right.
As you can love the kid as much as you want, but you know that by doing that, you are not helping him.
Yeah.
You're doing something really bad to that
It's
kid.
more of a disservice to the student. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
as a teacher, I see things from that perspective. It was, as a kid, you're like, oh my gosh, she loves me. She's helping me. She's giving me
Right.
the answers. And I remember having these diplomas, getting like first place in this and that. I'm like, I never deserved any of that.
Wow.
And all my pictures with my teacher holding that feels like a lie,
Oh,
you know? So
yeah. Because you felt like you didn't earn it.
I did not earn
You
that.
didn't put in the work to earn it.
Yes. But as a sixth grader, I remember my teacher. Well, in Peru, you have a lot of celebrations in your schools, and one
Mm-hmm.
of them is the anniversary of your school. So I remember having a contest, ELA contest. Well, it
Mm.
was in Spanish, right?
Yeah.
But this contest of language arts was about spelling. And before then, I was really bad at it. But that day, and I still have memory of that, fresh memory. I remember I got first place, and that's the one time where I thought to myself, I do deserve this because I work really hard half of the year, and I'm getting this first place as a spelling bee. Let's call it that because that's how you guys call that, right?
Yeah, it's
So
going to be.
that was one of the first things that I thought to myself, I deserve this because I work myself to get here.
That's good. That's what an
Yes.
interesting story. So
My
did you
sixth
feel
grade was amazing.
so, so did you feel that after going from that first private school of not learning anything to then transitioning to the second, was that something that motivated you to continue to pursue that with like other grade levels?
Oh, yes. Yes. I did have some up and downs during high school too,
Mm-hmm.
but my sixth grade, it was wonderful. Then I moved in Peru. You only have, well, you have kindergarten, you have elementary schools for 6 years, and then high school for 5 years. We don't have junior high.
Mm.
So the next year, I went to a public school in that same town, first grade of high school, and oh my gosh, I will never forget this. My math teacher, he was amazing. He could make us compete against each other, and I've never seen kids running to the board to solve math problems ever. But he would give us points, and at the end of the trimester, he would like give you extra points for that. And he made math so easy. I loved my first grade of high school. It was wonderful, and I will never forget him. Um, in elementary school in Peru, you don't learn English as a second language,
Right.
but in a private school, you do. So I did learn some English back then, words, it's nothing crazy. But when I moved to my first year of high school to a public school where my classmates did not learn English, I was the first one. So that was another subject that I enjoy a lot. And my teacher was very nice too. So those are the two subjects that I remember, uh, or I have good memories about. Math, I always hated math, but back then I loved it.
I know. I feel like that that grade level. I
Mhm.
don't know, maybe the math is a little bit more easy, more fun, or the teachers making it a little bit more fun. I feel as they as you go higher in the school system, the math gets a little bit more intense, so it's maybe a little bit less space to make it entertaining or fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so you have to find ways, and he was
Right.
fun. My second grade of high school sucked. Sorry.
Yeah.
As I said, I had some up and down. So that's the year that I kind of went down. My grades went down. And now that I think about it, it must have been the age. It's that age where
Yeah.
you care more about other things. You care more about your friends. You care
Yeah.
about like your first boyfriend. So that was kind of a down. And as I told you before, I moved to a different school again.
Yeah.
After my second year of high school, I moved to the city to live with my aunts and my cousin. That first year, the first couple months were a little bit rough. I went like from being in a small town to a bigger city.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big change. Um, my excuse back then was like, I've never learned this. I've never learned this. Well, I didn't pay attention during second year of high school. So guess
You
what
continue to struggle.
happened?
Yeah.
I struggled a little bit the first couple months, but then I picked it up. My teacher was nice, and most of my teachers, they helped me. And I succeed my third year of high school, I guess. Yes, but I finished my high school in that school.
Gotcha. And then after high school is colegio, like college?
College, yes, I went to public university. Now in Peru, when you go to a public university, you have to take a test, and you have
Mm,
to, yes, let's say they have 10 spots for, it's more, but 10 spots for education.
right.
And there it could be 50 people trying to apply for that spot,
Wow.
but the 10 who got the highest scores are the ones
Mm.
who get into that career.
So by that point, when you went to college, did you know that you wanted to go into education?
No, and that's what I was gonna say. I didn't know. I think I kind of like it, based on some teachers that I had back then in high school. uh, but my dad was always, he wanted me to have a better career.
Yeah.
And when I say a better career, means a career that pays you more money.
Right.
Unfortunately, back then in Peru, teachers didn't make that much. It was
Gotcha. Mm.
very sad. So he wanted me to, he has a business, so he wanted me to be an accountant. He wanted me to be a lawyer. He wanted me to be a manager or even a dentist. But never crossed his mind that I could be a teacher. And that was the last thing he expected me. He didn't want to. So the first time I applied to that uh, university, I applied to be an accountant, and I didn't make it. I guess because deep inside I didn't really want it.
Right.
I told before I did love math at some point in my life, and it wasn't really my thing. Second, he's like, okay, try something else. Try maybe a lawyer. And so I tried to get into the, law school, but didn't work because,
Right.
again, deep inside, I didn't want it. So for my third time, I told my mom, she went with me to sign up again for the test. And I said, Mom, I am going to apply for the teaching school,
Okay.
specifically to be an English teacher. And
Okay.
I said, that is the only one, because you can do two options. You can do, I don't know, medical school. And if you don't have enough points, you can do nursing, something related. But I told my mom, I don't want a second option. I want to be a teacher, and I'm just going to apply to be a teacher. And if I don't get it, then I don't get it. And my mom was like, okay. So I did, and I got in. I got enough, points to make it in. So I got into the teaching school to be an English teacher.
So that by that point, was that something that you felt passionate about, like you in the back of the mind while you're of your mind while you're applying for all these other things, is like teaching something that was consistent with you in your career goals?
Yes, and I think also because I did like a lot English, and during my years of school, I did love learning English, and I thought I want to teach English. And here comes a small, something little small. When I was in my second grade of high school, I had an English teacher who was really bad. never
Mm.
taught a thing. And because it wasn't her specialty, she was not an English teacher. So the only thing that she would do was that, like, write down things on the board, and she would be like, "Okay, time to write it down on your notebooks." Never, it wasn't her thing. So I guess I always remember that because I'm like, I want to be an English teacher. I want to be able to teach English as a second language when I was back in Peru, right? Yeah.
So then you finish your education for teaching in Peru. And then how was it that you were able to kind of transition to the US, to come teach to the US?
So back when I started my career, I didn't know that there were programs for people to come to the US. And until I was in my last year of university, when my friends told me that they came here in a program, it's a work and travel program for people who are free during the summer, but not any people. You have to be studying at a university or a college or an institute. So you have to be a student. So you can come here for 3 months. So I did that during my last year of university. I came here. I went on a work and travel to Minnesota. So
Mm.
during my summertime in Peru, that was winter time in the
Oh.
US. So imagine me in Minnesota, never, never seen snow.
Yeah.
It was so cold. And the good thing about doing that was that I had friends, Hispanic friends. I came
Mm.
with one of my friends from college. We were not very close, but we were classmates. Uh, and then we shared a room with another girl from Peru who was from Lima. And then um, a couple more girls from Lima also came to the US in the same program. So it was a big group of Hispanics, um, university students. Uh, I work at a resort, and that was fun. I learned how to ski. But then, yes, it was a little bit hard because it was a very small town called Lutzen. So there's not much to do besides going to ski.
Yeah.
Um, we couldn't really go to the city. We didn't know how to drive. We didn't have a car. So most of our days were in our apartment or just like meeting with some of the girls if someone could give us a ride. Because since it's a small town, not everything's close. Um, right? So that was fun. And then I went back to Peru and I learned about the au pair program, which is a program where you come to the US as a nanny, but you live with a family. You do
Mm.
have a schedule, uh, but you get to live with them. They don't pay you that much, but that's part of the program because it's an exchange program.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, you have a roof, you have food, um, and they pay for you to go take a course. Uh, but it's nothing big. I took arts. That was fun. It was fun. I learned a lot, but it's nothing like, oh, you can come and study something else. It was just you need to get some credit.
So when you were doing that role as an au pair, what state were you in when you were doing that?
I was here in Illinois. I live in Chicago, close to the North Avenue Beach. I live a block from the History Museum. So very
Gotcha.
close to downtown, yeah. That was a good experience. It was tough at the beginning because unlike the work and travel program, I didn't have my friends anymore living with
Yeah.
me, right? It was just me.
You didn't have your
My
support system. Yeah.
Yes, my poor English because yes, I did go to my university to learn English for 5 years, but it's a different story when you have to come here and
Mm.
go out there and speak it. So the first 3 months were really tough. I had a boyfriend at the time who I learned a lot of English from. He didn't speak in Spanish, so guess what? I had to learn English.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the family that you got kind of got placed with were, what was their background? Were they Latinos, or was it
Mm,
just any family?
it's you have to interview with a bunch of families, and I happen to
Mm.
be here in Chicago. Um, the the mom was a doctor, and the dad was an engineer.
Wow.
So, yeah, they were. was a PhD, and mom, I don't know, she was gynecologist, I think, but she had some specialty, like something she focused on, something very rare. So she did speak some Spanish because her parents were from Puerto Rico, but she was born here. So she spoke some Spanish. So whenever I struggled with English back then, she would like talk to me in Spanish, but most of the time our conversations were in English. And I think that helped me a lot to learn. I went from zero to something.
It's like when you're kind of when you're placed in something, you have to like immerse yourself in it, and that's
Yes.
like you said. You said that I didn't have an option with like your boyfriend, so then you had to learn how to do it. Yeah.
Yes, and even with the kids, you do learn a lot with like younger kids. You know, they were
Yeah.
pretty young, 4 and 1. So the first couple of weeks, it was rough for them. It was rough for me because we couldn't understand each other. And
Oh.
then he's
Yeah.
repeating himself and he's getting frustrated. And I'm like, I'm learning.
Yeah.
Have some, you know,
Well, they don't
making
know.
some
Once
fun.
again, like their little brains don't understand that
Yes.
there's people out there that they don't speak in English. So
Yes, but then I learned a lot with them, and then at some point, I guess he learned to understand my accent too, because after those 2 weeks, we never had issues.
beautiful.
Yeah,
So then, after you became an au pair, how did then you transition into getting into teaching?
I went back to Peru because the au pair program is just for 2 years,
Mm.
and that was rough because I got used to the kids so much that when I went to Peru, I would cry because I missed them.
Oh.
Yes, I
Yeah.
mean you can't stay longer unless
Yeah.
you get like a, I don't know, studying visa for like students, or if you get married. But I wanted to go back to my country, and I did, and it was rough. It was very rough. I went from organized to not so organized again.
Yeah.
It's if any of your followers have ever been to South America, they will understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So it's rough. But then I got a job at a private school, Catholic school. I am Catholic. So I worked there for 2 years. Um, I learned a lot. They were very,
Strict discipline.
strict,
Yeah.
discipline, but we had a bunch of activities that bring students and parents together. It was fun. I really liked working there. It was fun. Uh, and then things happen, the principal changed, and then I decided that I wanted to apply to work at a public school. uh, so in Peru you can either work under a contract for a year,
Yeah.
or you can apply and get what I call this a forever job, because you go through like some tests, interviews, and then you can get a job that is forever. No one can take it away from you. And as I said, unless you do something dumb,
Yeah.
you
Bad.
know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
bad. Yes. So then after those 2 years, I decided, I'm going to take the test just to see how it goes. I want to try it. Most teachers, they prepare themselves, they go take some classes, but I didn't have time because my schedule at the private school was very tight. So I had no free time back then. I had no life working at a private school back then.
Yeah.
But, that's what you get it. And that was what I got as soon as I got back. And I'm like, well, it's here in the city and I got to take it. So, but I enjoyed it. My coworkers were very nice. So finally, I applied to this job to work at a public school, and I passed the first test. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, okay, let's see how this goes." And after you pass the test, you have to go for an interview and you have to perform a class. So you have to pass the first test, then go and perform a class and have the interview with the principal. And after that, they grade you and they tell you if you get the job or not. And I did. Um, I was supposed to go and do it at a school that was very close to my parents' house,
Yeah.
15 minutes away or 20. But because again of my schedule, I couldn't have or find someone who could like suffer me, and I couldn't, I can't just leave my job.
Right, right.
So when it was time to go to the other school, because I got two schools I could apply for, I told myself I gotta go and do the best I can to get this job. So I traveled 4 hours from home to the mountains in Peru, and when it's meant to be, it's meant to be, because there was another teacher applying for the same job.
Yeah.
So it was the both of us competing. I interviewed with the principal, vice principal, and another admin. And then at 1 p.m., I had my class with fifth grade of high school. So imagine me performing a class with 16-year-old kids. But they behaved really well, because the principal was sitting back there with the vice principal and the other admin, and they're just watching you. You have to perform, and they're just watching you. And this is a funny memory that I have. I brought lollipops with me to give to the kids after the class,
Yeah.
just as a reward, for everyone. And the principal comes to me and he goes, "Good job." And he just wants to shake my hand, and I put a lollipop on his hand because I was nervous.
Yeah.
But my dad always jokes about that. I got the job. It wasn't because of the lollipop, but my dad goes, "You just got the job because of the lollipop." But no, yeah. And then I got that job, and I was like already set. I was like, okay, this is gonna be my life right now, because I'm gonna be working here forever.
Yeah.
And then I was there for the next school year, 2019, and 2090, COVID
Oh
happened.
my gosh. Yeah.
So we had to do remote, but Peru wasn't ready for that. We didn't have, kids don't have Chromebooks. Some of them don't even have phones.
Yeah.
So they had to do everything they can to at least have a phone, because we as teachers, we could just like prepare something on the computer, create a WhatsApp group,
Yeah.
and give the
Wow.
work to them, and they had to print it, or just copy whatever they
Yeah.
got on their phones to a piece of paper, because where I used to work in Peru, they don't have that much money, so
Right.
they can't
Yeah.
afford a computer. They don't have internet. They don't have, here in the US you have a phone, and you have internet
Right.
automatically.
Right. Right.
Now in
Right.
Peru, you have to pay little by little to get some internet. So it was very tough. Some kids, we never hear about them. So
It just
imagine.
that's really that's really sad, because obviously I know how it was like here and what happened here when the school system, to hear that there's countries out there that, it makes me really sad, and I'm just trying not to cry,
I know it's tough.
that these kids lost like an education, or those years of getting an education, and they're probably going to be behind because of that. It
Yeah.
just makes me sad.
Yes.
Yeah.
And English as a second language is such an important subject that I used to
Yeah.
teach. But think about it. Okay, maybe they can live a year without getting English,
Mm-hmm.
but what about math? What about reading?
Everything, right. Mm-hmm.
Everything else, even art, because sometimes, like, you know, it was so stressful. COVID was so stressful that maybe that kid needs to color a little bit. So
It's
it was
that,
rough.
and then, well, it's the education, but it's also the human connection, the lessons or environment of the things about learning about being in a school. It's community, it's connections, it's communication, it's all these like things that they're missing out on. Yeah.
Yes, they missed a lot for, a couple years. It was a very tough time. And I don't know here, but in Peru, they kept saying 2 more weeks, 2 more weeks. Big lie. It wasn't 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
it was a rough time. And then again, in Peru, where I used to work, technology is not huge. So me being young, and I told you I work at a private school where we use technology a lot. I went to a school where most of my colleagues were older than me. All of them were married with like bigger kids. They didn't know how to use a computer. They didn't know how to put things on Word or Excel, or
Yeah.
find things that could help the kids. So you're facing not only the struggle with the kids, but also the struggle with the teachers who don't know how to use technology.
Right.
And I did for my colleagues, at least or my closer friends, because sometimes you can't split that much, but I did what I could to help them. Like, I would teach language arts with this other teacher who didn't know much about um, technology, but he knew about his content area. And we
Right.
would be on the phone. I'm like, okay, you're going to be the brain and I'm going to be the technology. I would make things for me and him too.
So then that was 2019.
Yes.
And then you were in Peru from 2019 until what point were you able to kind of transition to the US to
Okay,
teach?
so yeah, that was 2019 where I went to work, and then 2020 where we had the pandemic,
Right.
right? And that whole year it was just like Peru again. So 2021, we were still doing online,
Yeah.
and well, in Peru we start the school year in March, from March to December, and in the US you start in August. So
Right.
I was half of the year in Peru. I had no, it never crossed my mind coming back here. Um, it did at the beginning. As soon as I went back from being an au pair, I thought about the teacher program. But after I got my job at that school, I was like, that's it. This is where I'm going to be. And then I had this friend, and she goes, well, she goes, do you know about the teacher program? I'm like, I know. And she's like, why don't we go? I'm like, I can't. I already have a job. And this is a job that I have forever. I'm not gonna leave my job. And she's like, well, why don't we go for a couple years? Because I could left for only a couple years. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I have to think about it. Do I really want to leave my job? Um, so I thought about it, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess we can do it. And I never thought about coming back to Illinois. Not that I didn't want to, right? It's just like, from all the states, you are applying for a job or looking for a teaching position. What are the odds that you can end up in Illinois again, right?
Yeah.
So, in fact, I was actually going through another agency that had schools in South Carolina. And then my mom had an accident the same day I was supposed to have an interview with them. So it kind of messed up a few things because I didn't know how to do some paperwork and they were not very helpful. And then my friend goes, why don't we try this other agency? And so we did try with this other agency. And I filled the paperwork. They were more helpful and they explained to you things better. So finally, they put my profile out there, and I think 3 days later, they are like, okay, there's this school that wants to interview you. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. So during that time, my dad had COVID, and he's the one who got the worst of all of us. So he was in bed, he couldn't even stand up. So I had to be by his side, taking care of him. We could not leave him alone because it was scary.
Right. Right.
Anything could happen to him. He couldn't even walk by himself for more than two steps far from his bed. So we had to be there. Anyway, I never had an interview with Americans. you know, talking about a teacher position, right?
Right. Right.
I had an interview with parents when I was trying to be an au pair, but it's different. So I was a little bit nervous. So right away, the same day I had the interview, I Googled a few videos on like what questions I could ask, what possible questions would they have that, I need to answer. And this was my thought again. Okay, I'm gonna do this first interview as it goes, and if I don't get the job, then at least I will have an idea on where to go, or what kind of questions they ask you, or what to. I don't. Well, you respond what you respond, because it's all here,
Right.
the way you
Right.
work. So I remember I record the whole interview, but as soon as the Zoom opened, 6 people right there. I'm like, oh my god, this is a lot of people
Wow.
just for me. So I was a little bit nervous, but I guess I went through. Then they asked me a bunch of questions. How I work, how I do this, what do I do in this case. Well, um, at the end I had a few questions. They seemed happy, but they just tell you, okay, you can leave. And I guess they talk after that. I don't know how that
Right.
went. And 3 days later, the agency goes, okay, the school is thinking about hiring you. And I'm like, oh
Wow.
my
Okay.
god. So I'm like very excited. I didn't tell anyone at this point in my family. Only my mom knew,
Hmm.
because I asked her to be like quiet, so you don't want any noise in the background, and she was the only one knowing. And then yeah, I started paperwork. I had to take an English test. You have to. Um, I was very nervous about that one test too, because I don't know if you have heard about TOEFL, but people who come from other countries to America, either for a job or to go to a university, they have to take the TOEFL to prove that they can speak English, listen, read, and write in English. So it's a tough test, but yeah,
Yeah.
I passed it. And yeah, I started paperwork. I went to the embassy. So, the US has embassy all over the
Mhm.
world, and
Yeah.
one in Peru, of course. So you have to go to the website and get an appointment so they can approve your visa, to come here. And the embassy of the US in Peru was closed back then. And my interview, think this was July. My interview wasn't until March of next year. I'm like, I need to be in the US in August for the start of the
Wow.
school year. But they would tell you, yeah, I mean, you can, they can give you a sooner appointment, but you have to, be on the website all the time trying to find something, but
Like an
nothing.
opening in caso, like
Yes,
yeah, like
like
in
an
case
opening.
somebody cancels or something. Yeah.
Yes, but nothing. No one wanted to cancel, I guess. And I'm like, what do I do now? And I'm talking to, my agency, and they are like, well, they need you in August. And they suggested, why don't you go to a different country to get your visa? And she goes, I hear of some people going to Mexico, going to Colombia. Well, my
Mm.
first thought was Mexico, because it would be closer to the US, but I ended up
Mhm.
going to Colombia. So I got my interview, I think it was middle August. But then they take 7 days to return your passport with a stamp. So I was there for 2 weeks. And you know what?
In Colombia?
When I, yes, when I went to Colombia, I already had everything packed and I took all my stuff with me. I mean, it's a risk because I didn't know if they were going to approve my visa.
Approve. Yeah.
But when you come here with a job and you are requesting those kind of visas, they are
Mhm.
most likely that they're going to give it to you. But I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take my stuff. And if they give me my visa, I just go from Colombia to the US. And if not, then I'll come back to Peru. What am I going to do, right?
Right.
So I went there. Another friend went with me. And actually, we explored Colombia a little bit. We went to Medellin, we explored Bogota.
Yeah.
I went to the interview. They approved my visa. I had to stay 7 more days there. And then I had to go pick up my passport and travel to the US. And that was another adjustment, as you asked before. Everything was new.
There's just so much transition throughout your life. You're constantly on transferring schools, transferring here. Yeah. Wow.
Yes, I guess that's my life. And I'm always on the move, as people say. And I want you to see my tattoo.
Yeah.
I did it last year in April, and it kind of represents me flying everywhere, feathers and birds, like, because that's me. I'm always somewhere else.
So the interview that you did for the school that you had to be at work for August, was that in Illinois?
Yeah, that was the first school I interviewed for, and that was the one that got me, the school I work for right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you literally interviewed for the school that you're teaching at right now.
Yes. I thought I was going to have more interviews. I thought, okay, this school's not going to hire me. I'm going to have another interview. And I do remember like someone telling me, if they want to hire you, take it, because you don't know if you're going to get another interview. I don't know if they just want to scare you and not having you be picky.
Yeah.
But I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. For me, it was going to be, I don't know. I guess I don't think things too much. And I'm like, I'm going to go to a different school regardless. So it's going to be new anyway.
Right.
So that's why I guess I don't think much, okay, what are the benefits of this and of that? I just go.
Right. So the interview you did, it was with the admin for the district and then the principal, or just the district people?
Yeah. It was the principal. It was some of the bilingual people that and I think some people from the board too.
Wow.
Yes,
I just had no clue that our school district was doing that they were working with like Latin countries to try to get, it makes sense because obviously we're in our community, we're a community highly influenced by Latinos. So it makes sense to be reaching out to educators from other countries to try to bring them over to teach.
Yes, and they do it through a third-party agency. So they contact this agency, and this agency is in charge of one, interviewing with you to measure your English level.
Yeah.
And like creating the profile and then putting it out there, so whoever is in charge in the district can like look at these profiles and be like, okay, I'm gonna interview this person, and then the agency sets up that it's like in between of all that information. Okay, I'm gonna give information to you and information to the district. So that year, 3 of us came. It was, a friend of mine, another teacher from Colombia, and me.
Wow. So then that was 2022 when you finally came 21. To the US? 2021. Okay.
Yes. And yeah, I had to leave my job behind. The law or the rules allow me to have 2 years. You can ask for 2 years of permission.
Mm-hmm.
They don't pay you, of course, because you state personal matters, and they let you do that for 2 years. So, but they don't count vacation time. They don't count the summer, so I was able to do it for 3 years.
And then are you able to kind of continue to teach in the U.S.?
Well, I had to leave my job behind.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but to come to the U.S. through this program, the U.S. Embassy allows us to come for 5 years.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes, so I still have 2 more years to be here.
What's funny is that meeting you and interacting with you, like, I feel like you've been teaching at the school for such a long time. Wow. To think about, and I don't want to like put pressure on this, right? Like, what's gonna like almost like happen next? Is it gonna be another transition? Is it gonna be like, you stay and continue to expand your knowledge here? Because once again, the schools need you.
It's it's hard, but I don't plan things.
Right.
When I came in the work and travel program, I found out, I don't know, like during my last year of college. So
yeah,
I never knew about that program. I never thought about coming in that program. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I want to do it. Au pair, I didn't know until I came back from the work and travel program. And I'm like, I want to do it. And then for the teacher, again, you didn't plan it. I'm like, I'm already here at my job. I don't really want to do it. But then, boom, someone convinced me, and here I am.
Because we met up for lunch yesterday, we talked about And you kind of mentioned it also as well, like on here. It's always there's always been almost like a theme of divine timing, or things happening to you for a reason, or happening for you for a reason.
I always thought that there is some kind of outside energy that takes care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I always found myself at the right place. When I was at my other job, I was always afraid of being new there because sometimes people tend to be a little bit jealous or like sketchy about like new people. But I found friends, and even though I only interact with them for 1 year, I still talk to them, and they were super nice, and they're always concerned about my job in Peru. Like they didn't want me to leave my job.
Yeah.
You don't. It's hard sometimes. Sometimes you meet people for only a year as a teacher because people come and go sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think I really connected with them, and that's the one thing I miss the most about my other job. I miss my coworkers a lot. That doesn't mean I don't love my coworkers right now.
Yeah.
I just the interaction with them was different, and it was like right away some kind of connection. They protected me. They always were taking care of me. They always got my back. It was nice to have them. And during my first year in the US, it was hard. The kids were tough. I don't know. I struggle a lot talking sometimes to people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to talk about. I find myself awkward.
And it's funny
Yeah,
because I don't feel like that about you. You always seem kind. You always come off not awkward, very comfortable, and I feel like the students definitely respect you. And I think it's because you're so patient and understanding and composed. Yeah.
I think that one of the biggest things here it's because I feel very comfortable teaching in my mother language.
Mm.
Um, that's students wise, right? I try to, and I do love teaching in Spanish. That's a huge thing. Now, as you said, like when you talk to me, there are things that we can talk about. You're not the only one who said that. I have another coworker who I would talk for hours with her,
Yeah.
and even my boyfriend goes like, "You don't talk much. You talk a lot,"
Yeah.
and he jokes about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I have to connect with people,
Mm.
and I have to feel comfortable with people.
Mm.
Like it's not that I don't get along with my coworkers. I guess I do.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we don't have things in common with some of them,
Right.
and that doesn't mean anything bad. It's just like they already, I don't know, have interest in common with other people that
Yeah.
they've been friends with for a longer period of time.
I was gonna
And
say, do
then
you think it's a cultural thing?
I think it's a cultural thing. I do have another friend, a colleague
Yeah.
at my job who has a different culture from me, but she's always curious about things from
Yeah.
my country. So she's always asking things. And we could talk for hours. I could tell her things, and she listens to me and she pays attention and she asks questions.
Right.
So I feel comfortable with her when I talk to her. So when I told her about me being awkward, as I'm telling you now, talking to like other people at school, she goes like, "Nah, you're kidding. I don't think you're quiet." She's like, "You talk a lot,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Well, it's because I feel comfortable with you."
Yeah. No, I understand that because that's how I am. I'm very for me, I'm very protective of my energy and the people that I share myself with. Like I'm very close with my friends. Like I've known them for years. It's understandable about finding people to find common ground. I will speak based on like because obviously I go to that school like all the time, so I know a lot of the individuals there. There's a lot of people with like different interests, but also not just that, it's like just people with different age levels. There's a spectrum at the school, and then also once again different ethnic cultural backgrounds.
As I tell my students, every person is different. And I tell them, if everyone was the same, what a boring world.
Right.
Like we're different and we have different interests, and that's okay. You have to find some kind of connection, some kind of same interest, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Little life lessons. That's one of the things that I think it's in, at least to me, because obviously I'm not at, I was going to say I'm not at the school all the time, but I'm usually at the school a lot of the time, subbing. But I think for me, as not being the regular teacher, I try to share those little life lessons with them because I think it's so important for the kids. Yeah.
Yes. That's the age where they try to understand or learn these things. It's tough.
It's a difficult age, but I don't. Didn't say it, but
Yeah.
she teaches seventh grade. That school goes from sixth grade to eighth grade, and those students are between. I'm gonna try to guess somewhere between 10 to 13, 14, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
11, 12, 13. Yeah.
yeah. It's tough. It's a really tough age. They're growing and their mental and like hormones and stuff it's a big transition from them,
Yes.
essentially going to, like, for them, like with sixth grade they're transitioning from the elementary to that eighth grade you're going to transition from the junior high to high school. I feel like that age range is a lot of transitioning, and that's why it can get a little tough. So what would you
Yes.
say are some of the challenges of teaching or teaching that grade level?
Well, as you said, there are so many challenges or changes, not
Yeah.
only in their bodies, but they're not kids anymore. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
coming from elementary school to sixth grade, and there are some changes. They're not thinking about coloring anymore, doing homework and being friends. That
Mm-hmm.
you have to deal with some drama sometimes, like friendship drama, boyfriend drama, and they're not focused anymore. And it has happened to me. Sometimes I jump into their little conversations in the computer, and they're not talking about doing homework,
Uh,
so it's hard to get their attention at that age. You have to be very careful, or you have to plan really carefully how you're gonna make them look at you or listen to you at that age, because even us, and I do remember being that age, and I think I told you when I was in my second grade of high school, I wasn't thinking about my subjects anymore. I was more concerned about my friends and the boyfriends.
yeah.
So it's a tough age, and it doesn't hit everyone the same. Or it does, but not everyone takes it the same way. Some kids care a lot about their friends. Some kids care a lot about boyfriends and girlfriends.
Yeah.
While I've seen also other kids who care about their studies, but still talk about boys or girls.
Yeah. I think there's a spectrum of interest. To me, it also gets tough, and I think it stems also like from home. You know what I mean? That really affects, and I will fight for this because I had a family member whose son used to be in our district. He moved to a different town or area, to a different school district, and he was telling me like, yeah, like how their son was doing so much better, and how he had friends, and how his grades are all they're higher, and this, and she was talking about how, oh yeah, like your district or whatever, the teachers don't care there, this and that. And I said, I cut that, and I was like, absolutely not. I said, I'm going to tell you from my experience, and I'm, like I said, I'm just a substitute teacher, but I will say it's not that the teachers don't care, because I know for a fact the teachers care. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you from my experience, and I think it's because of the community and stuff. We work in, would you say, like a lower income community or
Yeah, I would
disadvantaged
say that.
community, and back home they're dealing with other stuff. They might be dealing with they're in sixth, seventh, or eighth grade, and they're taking care of a little kid, like a little third and fourth grader, and they're responsible as to be caretakers for this young individual. So sometimes being a student gets lost in that. I've had where students, they're sleeping in the classroom, and I go and I talk with them, and it's like, I'm sorry, like, I was trying to get a good sleep, but my little brother kept me up all night, and I share a room with him or whatever. I think that like I said, I'll fight for this. That I don't think it's the teachers. I think it's, unfortunately, like what happens back home and in that community. Yeah,
I totally agree, and it's part of our culture. At least me, I grew up in Peru, right?
yeah,
And I'm telling you my experience because we have our kids coming from South America, and indeed, sometimes they do have to take care of their, younger brothers. And I've seen kids whose parents work all day; they don't see them. Some don't see them at all
right.
because sometimes the kid goes, well, I have to wait for my mom to come back from work and to take me to the school,
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh, I need you to sign this. Well, I don't think I'm gonna see my mom.
yeah,
I don't see my mom because when she's at work I'm sleeping, and when I am at home she's at work.
yeah.
You hear those cases, and I had students who their parents were never home. So, like, who's teaching them values?
Yeah,
Who's teaching them how to be respectful, or how to be punctual, how to be honest?
right.
Those things that you learn at home when you're growing up.
It, it's their support system. Their
Yes,
support. Their support system is not missing, to say, like, not there. That's why I root for our community, and I try to support the best way that I can, and I know for a fact that, like, our schools need teachers or substitute teachers, because
yeah,
even a lot of the times the schools, they don't have enough teachers to even be in the classrooms. You know what I mean?
yes.
There's always, like,
Yeah.
openings for them.
And I want to add here about the kids and their parents, right? Sometimes it's not even the parents' choice.
Yeah,
They have to do what they have to do to
to survive.
bring to
Yeah,
survive, to bring home food. But it's kind of a sad environment for the kids, not
yeah,
being able to have someone there supporting them.
yeah. It makes me sad. It just makes me sad because I feel like teaching is, and especially at the age level, is already hard enough, and to have those, and like another thing to add to that age level, it just becomes difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say is one of the, like, the best things about teaching?
Well, you can interact with the kids, and I think you can make some sort of change in their lives. You want them to be good human beings. I think content area anyone can teach, but being able to change them in a way where they can be good people, I think that would be huge. That's
Yeah,
the power that we teachers have. That's our biggest power. We see them every day, and we can make that change. We can give them a smile. Maybe they're having a bad day, and you smile at them, you ask them that day how they're doing, what's going on in their lives, could make a change. It's something that I really love about being a teacher, like being able to go to school every day and being able to see them and being able to know what's happening in their lives, because we need to see beyond our content, our just classroom roles. There is always something happening in those little lives.
it's almost like you're able to be that paternal role for them. Yeah,
And sometimes they look for that,
yeah,
and I would say I've seen some students who look like they're in need of love, someone to give them a hug, someone to tell them how much you love them. I mean, you end up loving them. You knew my students last year.
yeah.
They were a little bit crazy, but
Real
you try to,
challenge. Yeah.
yeah, but you try to find the good thing in them. And sometimes as groups, they can be a little bit tough,
I always try
but
to be patient with them. I think that, once again, that age range is so hard. All you can do is be patient with them, and all I can do as like, their sub is just be patient with them, enforce the rules, obviously. But also, once again, for me, I like to do life lessons. I always try to tell them that, I came from this school district. I actually went to that school, and they always get so surprised. So just to be able to, I don't know, even just be like you being there for them, it's a stability, to say it like that. Like you're a constant for them, just support system for them.
Yeah, you need to let them know that you understand them, that you listen to them.
Right.
And I do have to say, it is hard for a lot of people to at least understand my kids.
Yeah.
Because it's a different culture.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand. I do tell my students all the time, you guys come from different countries, different cultures, different ways to learn. And the one thing they do have to learn when they get to my classroom is you came to a different country, to a different school, you need to adjust yourself to the rules. That doesn't mean I don't get you. I understand you, and I'm here to listen to you and to learn from you too. Because every kid, even if they're not Hispanic, in every classroom, every kid is different.
Yeah.
And these ones too, they're different. And for a lot of people, it is hard to understand them. It's not easy.
I mean, even for me, going to school there, it was mostly, I'm going to say it how it is. It was mostly Mexican kids. Now, like going into the school, I'm able to see there's a lot of kids coming in from South America. And even in the community, a lot of individuals come in from South America. So it's completely different. Like they'll say lingo or language, right? That's a little bit different from me. I mean, they like to make fun of me because obviously I mostly now speak in English, so they'll like judge me, but that's besides the point.
And even for the kids, sometimes, now that you mentioned that when you went to school back then, it was mostly Mexicans.
Yeah.
You see, those kids were already born here. So
yeah.
There is some culture in between. It's not the same like a kid who came from Mexico, like right now, and a kid whose parents are Mexicans, but they were born here.
Yeah.
Still different. And sometimes these kids have a hard time understanding these kids.
Yeah. I had kids like the 8th graders from last year. There was one student who he told me he was like he was born here, but then I think he was raised in Mexico. And then so it was just like they would always make fun of me. Like it was just really funny because they would say like, Miss, you're a whitexican, and I'm like, well, tell me what a whitexican means to you, because like for me, a whitexican means like, oh, you're half white and you half Mexican. And they were like, well, you're a Mexican person that's trying to be white. I said, absolutely not. I was like, you have to understand, and like I said, little life lessons. I was like, you have to understand. Like for me, I was just about to say in Spanish. I was in bilingual classes till about 3rd grade, and the reason why I ended up transitioning was because my school, by that point, there wasn't any 4th and 5th grade. There was no bilingual teachers, so then they put me to all English classes, and then I had to get like additional support because I was obviously a bilingual kid transitioning into English classes. Mm-hmm. So I tried to tell them like, you gotta understand. So that, and then I'm like, as I continued and I went to college and this, I'm like, I'm doing papers, I'm doing speeches, I'm talking with people in English. The people that I talk in Spanish with is mostly like my parents, and now even the school, and a lot of the times as a substitute teacher, I'm not giving lessons in Spanish. I mostly come in to cover a teacher, right? I'm providing the material that they left me. So I'm mostly doing, for the most part, a little bit of transition, not in like the professional sense, but more like conversational is what I tried to explain to them. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard, at that point, yes, you do have parents who speak Spanish, but you were born here, so you're experiencing this culture.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure your parents still somehow teach you, or in their house they have part of their culture, but you went to an American school, you went to an American university, you probably at your university had American friends. So that kind of becomes your culture. It's a mix between your parents' culture and the culture that you're living in.
I felt like for me, right, my elementary, my junior high, I felt that was mostly prominent, Mexican prominent or Latinos prominent, right? It wasn't for me until high school when I went to the opposite, and you'll know the two high schools. So I went to the west side of the high of the high school, and that at that time that was mostly Americanized, So
Mm-hmm.
most of the Latino people ended up staying on the east side or that
Mm-hmm.
east high school. So
Right.
but yeah, it's like I kind of grew up with it. But yeah, I grew up here talking Spanish to my parents, and then transitioned to an American education, to say it like that. Yeah,
Education. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, those are things that sometimes the kids don't understand.
Well, I know. I know. And it's like something that all you could do is just, like I said, you can just talk to them
Yeah.
and explain, because that's my thing. It's like I try to explain because just so that you learn, like so that you are aware of that. Because at that age range, sometimes you are in that bubble of your
Mm-hmm.
friends, your life. Everything seems like everything else. You kind of have blinders, and you're in your
Mm-hmm.
bubble, and I don't know if you at that age range if you see beyond that bubble.
Yeah, nothing else exists for them.
That's why I try to tell them little life lessons. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want to wear my ID. Listen, when I'm driving or I go somewhere, I have to have my license. I'm like, if I get pulled over or something, I'm like, I have to show them my ID. I try. It's little things like that. Like I said, little life lessons so that they're aware. I don't want them to think like, oh, well, you're not being fair. I'm like, well, no, like. It's not that we're not being. These are rules. There's once
Yeah.
again, like I tell them, like you have rules here at the school. I have rules in this world, right? I have rules when I'm on the road or if I go to the air, they're like different scenarios. It's like there's rules that we have to follow in this society.
Yeah, totally.
Is there anything that I maybe didn't ask or anything else that maybe you want to say?
Well, challenges and changes are always going to happen in our lives. And I think I will be the perfect example for that. I've always been changing. I'm pretty sure have I had some positive impacts in from all these changes, and I'm always learning. I'm learning at my work, I'm learning at home, and I don't know. This is my life right now, going from one place to another. But I hope the future to settle down already. Hopefully, well, I don't know if you know, but I live with my boyfriend, and who knows? Maybe he already got me. I hope I can still grow at work. I was starting to get my bilingual endorsement. I finally got that, so that's a big thing for me. Study was a little bit hard these past few months because, well, something maybe I forgot to tell you. I am a volleyball coach at my school, and I'm also a soccer coach. For
Yeah.
junior varsity girls. And going to school was a little bit hard because at some point I was taking 3 classes at the time. So I was coaching and I was studying and I was working. It
Yeah.
was tough. It was a challenge. It was a change, but all in the good, all for good.
Yeah.
So, if you are going through changes, you are facing some challenges, it's possible.
Definitely. I have like one last question, and it's a big one. What do you hope for your students?
I I'm always wanting them to succeed. And I'm always talking here right now about my bilingual kids. I just want them to have the same opportunities everyone does. And
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that they know that they can do it, that they are able to do it as long as they want. And this is something I always tell them.
Yes.
I always tell them, you guys can do this.
Yeah.
If one of you can, the rest of you do. I always tell them, everyone's got a brain. You can think and you can do things. Sometimes we choose to be lazy, but it's not because we can't.
Right.
They can do it. There are people facing other challenges in
Right.
life that might hold them behind. And I tell them, you are in this country right now. Maybe not by choice. I always tell people sometimes, as a kid choice, it could be, I never wanted to be here. My mom, my dad brought me here.
Right.
But they are here now and they have the opportunities. We as teachers give them the opportunities to succeed in life so they can have a career, so they can do better than probably what their parents want.
Right.
And I always tell the kids, don't do this for your parents, because at the end of the day, and this is sad, but unfortunately our parents are not going to be here forever.
Right.
But what about you? What are you going to do with your life?
Yeah.
This is something I tell my kids. Everything you do, it's going to be for your benefit.
Now I feel like the education and the workforce, right? It's very competitive, and I try to tell them, I'm like, listen, it can start now. Like from now, it's like you have to work so hard to accomplish whatever you want. I'm like, you can do it as long as you put in the hard work, but I also want you to keep in mind that this is very competitive. There's other people maybe going for what you want to do. So you have to put in the work. That's one of the things I try to tell them. I'm like, you have to, if you want to do it. I always kind of quote like Men in Black. I always call them like, you have to be the best of the best of the best of the best of the best, kind of type of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I always tell them that, like, this is your time. Don't waste it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, when we're adults, we regret a lot of things.
Yeah.
And again, they're kids. They don't know, but sometimes someone needs to tell them.
Something that you said, and I'm like, I have to write it down, was that you talked about their parents, and like, obviously their parents, we know what life is, you live and you die, right? I had an eighth grader in May that asked me for like advice. I'm like, if you can give me any advice, which was weird. And I talk about this in the episode about me becoming a substitute teacher. She asked me, I'm like, if I can give her any advice about anything. I'm like, oh my God, that's so much pressure. Like, I wasn't expecting it. And I said, you need to do what you love, kind of to what you said. I'm like, whatever you pursue, you have to do what you're passionate about or what you love, because at the end of the day, you are that person that's going to school, after that career, you're going to be the one living it. And I'm like, so please choose something that you're going to love to do. There's nothing worse than doing something that maybe you're not passionate about. But I'm like, I wanted to be that voice to let them know that it's okay to follow your dreams. And I think I want to say that because I don't think anybody ever told me that. Like in your experience, you said your dad wanted you to be an accountant, to be a lawyer, because they were looking, and it's kind of like the same thing with like my parents. My parents wanted me to be a teacher. For you, your parents wanted you to have financial stability because they didn't have that growing up. And even as they became adults, it's like they always had a fight almost their whole lives, right? So I wanted to tell them and be that voice of to follow your dreams, because maybe they're not hearing that at home. And it almost like clicked to her. I don't think she was expecting that.
Yeah, they need someone to tell them, do what you love. And if you as an adult, you're not gonna say it, but you're thinking otherwise, you're gonna be miserable for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It happens. Like, we see people changing careers, or we see people who already have a degree and don't like it, and then they have to go back to school because they need to find their passion.
Right. Well, this is the reason why I definitely wanted to bring Katherine on, because I knew she had an interesting story. I didn't know quite all that journey, all that transition, and that's why I wanted to have you here. It's always so weird to me to call, well, now that I'm calling you Katherine, because every single teacher that I like interact with, I always call them like Miss your last name. It's like a respect thing. So like hearing, like calling you by your first name, it feels so. I ended up texting her and I was like, what do you want me to call you?
I know the same thing happens to me.
Yeah.
I call my colleagues by their last names, and I say Mr. This or Mrs. That, because Same culture. I come from Peru. You never call people or who are older than you by their first name.
Yeah.
So I never did, even though some of them were my colleagues, I was never able to call them by their names. I
Yeah.
always was like, oh, Miss this or Mr. that.
I mean, I think there's still teachers there that were, when I went to school, like they're there, so it's always like,
Yes. And I had some colleagues telling me, you can call this person this name, right? I'm like, I know. So I try to explain them where I come from.
and the fact that when I'm around the students, I try to have respect for you or show you respect is in the same way for the students to show you respect, because you know how they sometimes
Yes.
want to get away with it and then they'll start trying to call you by your first name. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with
Of
me.
course. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed this conversation and sharing a little bit of me.
I love it. Thank you. I do appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lastly, I just want to say thank you to anyone who tunes in to listen. I would appreciate it if you could leave a review on here, and would be grateful if you could let me know what information resonated with you. Please follow and share on social media. The pages are at Se Vuelve Podcast, or my personal is at Se Vuelve Monica. Once again, thank you so much for listening. Nos vemos pronto. Talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.